Happy Mother's Day. Actually, if you didn't get a chance to bring your pictures up and put it here, just come on up and bring your pictures either here or over here. As you know, we're celebrating Mother's Day today. Oh, look at that. That's a good spot right there. That's a good one, David. Okay. Right there. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. This mother energy, and this nurturing presence within all of us, this divine nurturing presence is within all of us. And we want to acknowledge our mothers, which is, mothering is probably the most difficult and yet rewarding job there is, right? And while we acknowledge that we all grew up in different families, we all had different experiences, some vastly different, some really positive experiences, some not so much, right? Some in the middle. Again, we all had mothers, right? And we know that our mothers did absolutely the best they could with the consciousness they had at the time. They did the best they could with the consciousness they had at the time. And by the way, so did we, right? We are part of that whole situation. And I know some people just think they're lucky stars that they had the mother that they had. And again, some not so much. But here's the thing. We infinite divine being chose to incarnate into this limited human experience that is asleep and dreaming a dream of separation. Some would wonder why we chose to do that. But we can assume that we didn't come here just to kind of hang out or to be entertained or just to be another consumer, right? We chose to come here to awaken to that magnificent presence that is within us, that expresses as us, and to help others awaken to their divine self. We came here to be that presence of love and that presence of light, and to shine our light in our own unique way. And that unique way is very much shaped by our early life, by our parents, by our mother. I believe, and it is my personal belief, not necessarily unity, my personal belief, that we chose beforehand what families we would be born into in order to learn whatever it is we needed to learn, to hone whatever qualities, skills, abilities that would make our unique path, even though that path may have been completely different from what our parents had in mind. Also, even difficult and painful experiences can help us cultivate inner strength, right? And essential qualities that serve us through our life. And so today, I'd like you to think about, and if you feel so moved, come up and share a specific way that your mother helped to shape your life, had an impact on you. Whether that's through her words, her actions, her inactions, what she said, what she didn't say. Maybe it was a quality she modeled. Maybe it was a way that she encouraged you in a specific way that really had a lasting positive effect in your life. So think about this, and to get started, kind of as an example, I'll share one specific way that my mother had an impact on me, in many ways, right? But this one specific thing kind of came to my mind recently. And I thought, oh yeah. So I think probably from the time I was a preteen, I had really strong opinions that I loved to voice, in that kind of self-righteous way that teens often can do. And, we're looking back on it and I think, oh my God, most of it was wrong. So, not all, And my mother, rather than saying, oh, that's wrong, or you're stupid, or, you're not old enough to know enough, just wait till you go, she didn't make me wrong. Instead, she listened to me, and she sort of affirmed that, I had interesting ideas, and would gently encourage me to think that idea through, to, kind of investigate that a little bit further. So a specific example, I recall, I was, about 16 or something, and I proclaimed that I was going to escape that materialistic, status-driven, way, that kind of soul-sucking adult life that I saw a lot of adults being sucked into. And I'm going to escape that. And so she said, in essence, something to the effect of, oh, that's an interesting idea. That has a lot of merit. And she said, well, I know you love your music, and you love your sound system that you've got kind of set up in your room. Like, it's a really nice, you love that, right? So I'm wondering how that would work into this life that you envision for yourself. Now, there's a snarky way to say that, right? And there's a loving way to say that. And she said it in a loving way, which helped me to really, think a little more. Okay, yeah, how am I going to, I do love my music, I love that sound system. If I'm living this sort of money-free, spiritually focused, hippie kind of lifestyle that I'm envisioning for myself, how does that fit in, right? So not only was she, affirming that I was smart and I had good ideas, even though they weren't all good ideas, more than that, she was affirming me and my ability to consider a little further with her encouragement, investigate further, ask questions, really work it through in my mind. And that has really stuck with me my whole life and serves me today. Here's my picture of my mother. I was going to bring, I had a whole thing, but I didn't want to get it wet. Anyway, this is before I had all those big opinions. But that was coming, right? There was a seed in there. So you see what I'm saying about a way that, your mother kind of helped to steer who you are today. So here's a lovely microphone right here. And anyone who would like to come up and share a memory, yeah, Brad, jump on up. Yeah.
Somebody's got to go first, right? So I told Brad, I said, I don't think I'm going to speak today. I was just like, okay. The way that my mom influenced all of us kids, the three of us, I've got a brother and a sister, she made it really safe for us to be creative and to explore things differently. And she would give us tools to do that, but she made it really, she encouraged it. She taught grade 2 for 38 years, and that was her job, and she did a beautiful job raising the three of us. And but after she passed, we were going through some of her things, and boxes of just she kept a lot of cards and things, but she also kept. We found that there was all these grocery lists that were in there, you turn them over and there's poems written on the back of the grocery lists that she
Oh.
had written. So I think it's one of those it's kind of an homage to the sacrifices that mothers make for the family, because I think there are so many other things that she would love to have been spending her time doing, but she would still find a way to do it on the back of her grocery list, but she, I think, expressed it in her kids too by allowing us to be creative, so in that safe space. So that's what I do.
That's beautiful. Is her picture up here today?
Yes, her picture's right there, right at the bottom face of the roast. Yep, I'm in there. You can sit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Lovely. What was her name?
Carol.
Carol. Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Roshana. Yes, get your mom. Bring her over here.
This is my mom. She was playing a recital, and she made the dress that she's wearing here. She's about 18 here, long before I met her. She was a brilliant pianist and organist, and then to support the family, she became a librarian at a medical library, a multi-hospital medical library. And she used to edit these papers that the doctors would submit to medical journals, and she did this for free. I saw her many, 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 many nights, with her red pen, writing on these papers. When I was about 30, I found the power of editing from my mom. I wanted to get a raise from this company, and I wrote a letter to the president of the company, and I said, "Here's this letter, what do you think?" And she said, "Oh, I think we can do better than that." And she edited the letter. And it was so powerful and so moving that they were overjoyed to give me a raise. They gave me a $4 an hour raise. And this was in the 80s, so it made a huge, huge difference. And I found the power of editing, and I later became an editor, a managing editor at a daily newspaper without a degree.
Wow. Can we put her back over here? We'll put her back over here. Thank you, Roshana. That was beautiful. All right. Yeah, Teresa, come on up.
Well, there was a multitude of ways my parents in general supported me as a child, including free thinking being one of them. But Brad's story reminded me of something that comes up often for me. My mother was very interested in us learning empathy and learning how to understand how to be in other people's shoes. So when we were children, one of the ways she supported our creativity was she would have us for a whole day act as though we were blind. So we would have to wear blindfolds for the day and go through our day as though we couldn't see. And then other days as though we couldn't hear, so nobody spoke. And we had to understand one another through whatever mechanisms we were able to do that. And retrospectively, I thought that was brilliant, because those days we were silent. I mean, as a mother, she probably got a lot of peace. But also, one of the most profound ways is my mother was a ceramic artist that she gave up when we were children, when she started having children. She stopped doing ceramics, but she did do one mosaic piece that hung in a very prominent place in our family home. It happened to be the Virgin Mary. And when I stopped doing traveling nursing and became stationary here, I realized I had this strong affinity for mosaics, because this was like a very hand-done piece by her. And so I feel like it led me to doing, ultimately, my work as a mosaic artist. And as a tribute to her, as she was aging and living with me, I did do the Virgin of Guadalupe as a tribute. And there's actually a shrine to her now at St. Thomas More Church, where they put a whole shrine, outdoor shrine for that. But anyway, my mother was very spicy and very playful. So.
Oh, wow. How wonderful. Thank you. God. That's what yeah, Tim, come on up.
Okay. So, this is my mother So I'm wearing this red cap because one time she said, "You look good in red, Tim." So a little thing about this picture. This is a copy that a friend of the family who played piano in our church, actually, but he was a really great photographer. It's a copy of the original, and I think she's maybe 20 years old, but she, over her lifetime, she told me 2 different ages she was, so I'm not really sure. Anyway, a friend of mine from high school, his name was Tracy, he saw this picture for the first time, I think, in the first house that I had, which was in my hometown. And he goes up to it and he says, "Oh, your mom was pretty." And he carried this to the point, it's like, well, if I met her today, I would ask her out. There are a couple of things that stick in my mind, at least right now, things that she said. There was a friend who lived next door to her who was complaining about someone on and on and on. And so my mother was telling me about that, and she was like, "Well, you know, she's a Christian, but I always thought being Christian was being able to forgive." So that kind of sticks in my mind. She kind of, you know, when I was a young man, and I'd go out and party and stay out for like 1 in the morning or something like that. I'd come back into my parents' house, you know, and trying to, you know, be very, very quiet. And I'd always hear from the back of the house, their bedroom, just to let me know that she was aware of, you know, what was going on. So, in a way, that kind of has influenced me also. It's like a conscience.
Your conscience, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So my mom, just so you're aware, she is living the good life in Athens, Greece today.
Oh,
On a
nice.
cruise, been on a cruise for 2 weeks. They're coming back tomorrow. But so my mom did what you were supposed to do in the 60s. She got married at age 20 to her high school sweetheart. They're still married. We have very, you know, like ideas about whether that's still a good thing or not. But anyway, you know, they've been together for almost 60 years. Well, married, longer than that. But anyway, you know, like, you know, got married at 20, got her associate's degree, you know, and just, you know, had the kids, stayed home with my brother and I until we were each like 4, went to preschool, and then as quickly as she possibly could, went directly back to work, you know, like whatever was, you know, kind of accepted and allowed at that time. But when she worked at UNCG forever. She still does, actually. She's 79 years old and still works 16 hours a week at UNCG in her same department. She was smart. She double dipped where she retired and then stayed out. And now she still gets her retirement and then she gets paid. She's very smart. Anyway, so, but yeah, she still works there. And so because she was working at UNCG, she could continue to get her bachelor's and do it part-time, do it, you know, if not free, like a lot cheaper. And so when I was in high school, she took 4 years to get her last 2 years to get her bachelor's degree. And so I have memories of us sitting at the dining room table when I was in high school, and I was doing my homework, and she was doing her homework, and we did that together. And then like when I was 17, she graduated, and we saw her like walk across the stage, and I'm like, "Go, Mom!" And she was horrified because she was like, I was so embarrassed, and I was like, "Mom, I don't think they think you're 22. You know, I think they've probably known that for a while. You're not 22." But anyway, so but, you know, it's pretty, you know, great. Like it's a great. You know, kind of role model for me. Like, you know, education was always super important. There was no question we were all going to go to college. We were all going to, you know, just, you know, education was just super important. And I think, you know, my mom being, you know, kind of like what she was supposed to be for a while, and then it's, you know, in the 70s, 80s, you know, and she always kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and, you know, push the limits of what a lot of, you know, women were doing at that time. And so that's, I think, what my mom has given me, like that, like that strength, and that, like, she worked and she went to school, and she worked and she mothered, and she, did, and went to school and did all of that together. That I can do the same thing.
Do you have a picture of her up there? Oh, okay.
Sacred Cafe and all the things.
Oh, yes. I get it.
I'll show everyone a picture of her from Athens,
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
All right. Michael.
Yes, will you hold the picture up? I can't walk there.
Do we have a mic that we could bring over to Michael?
My mom was a nurse, and she cared for my sister and I. And my mom was a nurse, and she cared for my sister and I. She had a parakeet, and she spoke these words, and they stuck with me. The parakeet repeated, "I love you," and that's what she said. Thank you.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Yeah, Maria.
So my family moved around a lot, and before the age of 12, we had 4 international moves from Australia to Canada to Holland to Australia to Canada. And then once we got to Canada, we moved several times then too. So my mom never worked in those years, really, except a couple of part-time jobs. But what I remember from her is as we would start a new school yet again, and those were, and the tween years were tough. She'd say 2 things. She would say, "We always have family. No matter where we are in the world, you always have your family, and we have to look after each other." So fast forward years later, and Brad and I had moved away from Canada, from our family, and started a whirlwind of another 4 international moves. And we had our 2 fabulous children, and the photos I brought are just my mom with my kids. And no matter where we lived, she would show up, and she'd stay for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. Blessings and curses sometimes. But it was family, and it meant so much to her. And I've really learned that it doesn't matter where we are in the world, family is family, and certainly not perfect. But they're ours. The other thing I remember from her is, so I was this little naive Australian kid. We'd been on vacation before we moved to Canada the last time. I walked into 7th grade wearing a little pleated Italian skirt with a blouse, with a lacy collar and knee-high socks and like Mary Jane shoes, and every kid in that class was in skin-tight jeans and cougar boots. And I had an Australian accent. I sounded weird. So it became fun for them to get me to say bad words. And I wasn't allowed to say even the word stupid, right? Like in my house, we just didn't say bad things. So I went to my mother and I said, "So they want me to say like really bad words. I don't know what to do because I wanted to make friends." And she said, "Why don't you just sit quietly for a moment and listen to your heart about what's right, and you do what's right for you."
Wow.
Those were some words of wisdom that helped me all through life.
Wow, yes.
Yeah, and sensitive time. My mom, as many of you know, died right about this time last year.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now I'm sort of in the throes of the grief because I didn't have a lot of energy for grief last year. So thank you. That's lovely to share.
Thank you, Maria. We have a time for maybe a couple more. Yeah, Dolores, come on. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, this is my mother, Lynette. It was taken when she was about 15, I think. Anyway, my mother is still with us. She's living here, as many of you may know. And I hope I don't get teary, but anyway. Mom grew up in a very tight-knit German family in East Baltimore where everybody lived in the same area. Everybody came together on Sunday afternoon at Mom's house. And that's just the way it was. So fast forward to me. And I stressed that limit somewhat. So first, we lived in the area of Baltimore called Dundalk, and I then moved to northern Baltimore County. That was so far away. That was so far away. And then, oh my golly, I moved over the line into Pennsylvania. Who would take my grandchild that far away? It's an hour. And I said, Mom, I could live in Western Maryland or the Eastern Shore, and I would be further away. And then here it comes. I'm going to make the decision to move to North Carolina. Oh my golly. And she says to me, I said, Mom, how are you going to deal with this? How's this going to be for you? I have 2 sisters in Baltimore, all their families in Baltimore. How's this going to be for you? And she said, I will never stop you from following your dreams.
Oh.
Ever.
Oh.
And so what she taught me through her actions was that it's okay, in fact, it's the best thing to love someone so much that you're going to let them go to follow their dreams, even if that means maybe you're not going to see them as much and you can't reach out and touch them as much. And for me, this has been a really important lifelong lesson. As I have 2 biological sons. I have 2 sons by marriage. And as I release them, as I call it, into the wild, to do what they need to do to follow their life and still love. And so that's what my mom continues to teach me now as she lives with us. And she lets go every time I say, I need to be at Unity a little longer today. She's real attached to me. I want to go visit my friend from elementary school who is at the shore in North Carolina, and I'm going to be gone all day. Yes, you should go do that. So she continues to love and let go and love again. So thanks for letting me honor her.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dolores. All right, maybe one more short one. Okay, sorry. Yeah, Oswaldo.
Thank you. My mother. Oof. If I learned something from my mother, it was after I was 35, because the previous years I was learning how to forgive her. So what she taught me was that life can be with no limits. Can you imagine? I was 6 years old when I said, Mama, I want to go to visit my grandpa. And she told me, okay, you got to go to the bus station. You have to take the green bus. And then the bus has to say this. You compare these words with the words in the bus, and then you take that bus. If you are insecure, just tell the man that's going to be at your side that you're going to this direction, to this address, okay? I said, are you sure? She said, yeah, of course. You want to go? Go. I was 6 years old. So I went. So I arrived to my parents' house, to my grandfather, and he asked me, where's your mother? And I said, she told me to tell you that she will be here later. So how you got here? And I said, I just took the bus. What? So the thing is, she wasn't that kind of irresponsible. She was teaching me, but she was always checking on me. So she was some distance.
Yeah, yeah.
But that gave me the sense that I really can do it by myself. So that's what I learned. Mm-hmm. I am the only one who lives in here, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, United States. I am the only one. Why? Because I dare. So thanks to my mother, I learned about life can be with limits if I believe in them and I create them. Otherwise, I can be in Chapel Hill. Thank you.
All right, you guys gonna come up? Yeah. So you see how beneficial it can be to really spend some time and consider the blessings, the ways that both of our parents really gave to us. Because I think sometimes we get trapped into this idea of, yeah, you know, they weren't very nice to me, or they did this to me, and they did that to me, you know. And so to really sort of tease apart the good memories and to focus on that helps to fill us with gratitude. And also at the same time, we learn what it is about ourselves that was uniquely shaped that way, and how that particular quality can serve us in our lives, and really kind of focus on that and hold that as precious. All right, so you might notice there's a little activity happening over here. We have some flowers that we would like to hand out. And by the way, Leah, come on up here. I haven't had a chance to introduce. This is Leah McCarran, and she is our new member engagement coordinator. She's working with us, our member engagement coordinator. So, you know what, let's give her a little unity blessing, shall we? Let's do it. Yeah, welcome her in. Ready? We love you. We bless you. We appreciate you just the way you are. And we behold the Christ in you. Thank you, and welcome. Well, thank you. I'll take that. Everyone gets a flower to honor either your mother. If you're going to see your mother later this afternoon, please give it to her. Or just really the presence of that divine mother within. And take it in honor of that nurturing presence.